The birthday party looked like something carefully curated for a magazine spread every corner of the house, glimmering with the effort of perfection. There were towers of balloons in matching hues, a dessert table so extravagant it looked like it had a publicist and twins wearing coordinated shirts that proclaimed "Born to Shine." Children darted across the polished floors with embroidered bags clutched to their chests like pirate treasure. My daughter clutched mine instead. She was 7 small, shy in groups, but that morning she had chosen a glittery headband she said made her feel like a galaxy. In the car ride, she practiced saying happy birthday twice so she wouldn't stumble. She had also made 2 small cards, one for each cousin, with little stars carefully drawn, and signed with love. I was proud of her before we even stepped through the door. My husband and I stationed ourselves near the snack table, trying to smile through conversations with people we barely knew. My sister swept through the crowd like a politician, air-kissing, waving, adjusting her perfect hair, making sure every detail captured attention. She barely looked at us. My mother gave me her stiff smile, the one that said, "Don't cause a scene." My father nodded once, then concentrated on slicing ham as though it were a surgical procedure. When the time came for party favors, excitement rippled through the room. The kids squealed as they received bags decorated with glitter names, filled with stuffed animals, bubble wands, customized bottles, and shiny keychains stamped with their initials. One by one, their faces lit up as though it were Christmas morning. Then my daughter was handed hers, a plain white bag with no name, no sparkle, nothing to mark it as hers. Just a crooked sticky note in my sister's unmistakable handwriting. "Try harder next year." She held the bag cautiously, as though she hoped there had been some mistake. She opened it. Inside was a snapped crayon, an eraser smudged to gray, and a single peppermint that looked like it had been buried in a handbag for weeks. Her small throat tightened. Her hand crept toward mine, searching for reassurance. The room erupted with laughter. My sister led the chorus, her loud laugh sharp and deliberate, designed to prove she was still in control. "She's been acting out lately," she explained, as if humiliating a child could be spun as a joke, interrupting crying over tiny things. "This is just a little wake-up call," my mother chuckled. "It's good for her." "You cuddle her too much." My father grunted what might have been a laugh. Even the children joined in, though they didn't know why. They just followed the script adults handed them. My daughter tried to mimic their laughter, a trembling smile cracking her face as though she thought this was a test she had failed. My husband crouched, gently took the bag from her hands and said quietly, "You don't need this. Let's go get some real cake." We stood together. I didn't say a word, neither did he. We simply took our daughter's hands and walked out of that house like we were escaping a fire. No one stopped us, no one called after us, not even my sister. At home, my daughter sat curled on the couch, still holding the birthday cards she had made. She stared at the stars she had drawn on them, as if they might shift and explain what had happened. "Was it because I didn't say thank you fast enough?" she whispered. My chest fractured. "No, sweetheart," I said. "It was because some people forget how to be kind." She nodded, pressed the cards to her chest like armor, and drifted to sleep under the blanket her dad gave her last Christmas, the one stitched with words, "You are safe. You are strong. You are loved." I sat in the kitchen while my husband made tea. We didn't need words. This wasn't new. It was just final. He broke the silence. "I paused the payments," he said softly. "The rent, the grocery card, the electric fund, all of it." I nodded. Then I opened the drawer that held a folder I had been quietly building over the years. Messages, receipts, emails, evidence of every debt, every dismissal, every time they leaned on us and laughed at me for being sensitive. The folder was thick. I slipped in one last piece, the sticky note, "Try harder next year." It fit perfectly on top. My husband watched me without comment. When I looked at him, he nodded. Not like someone granting permission, but like someone saying, finally. Tomorrow, the lesson would not belong to my daughter. It would be theirs. And in the quiet of that night, while my daughter slept under the words that told her she was safe, I realized something, with a clarity that burned it, should never have reached her. But it had. And now, it was my turn to choose. The night stretched long, and heavy silence, thick enough to feel like another presence in the room. My husband and I sat at the kitchen table, a lamp casting a pool of light over the folder I had placed in front of us. Years of quiet tolerance pressed into paper and ink. Venmo receipts for property taxes I'd covered so my parents could go on a cruise. Texts where my sister asked me to watch her children so she could take a reset trip, promising she'd return the favor, and never did. Screenshots of group chats where my daughter was called too sensitive, where Emma joked she was going to be just like her mother, oversensitive and exhausting. It wasn't just proof, it was history. When I slid the sticky note into the top sleeve, something inside me shifted. That crooked piece of paper with its casual cruelty didn't just belong to my daughter's story, it belonged to mine. My husband reached for my hand. He didn't say a word, and he didn't need to. We had decided tomorrow would be different. At dawn, we moved like soldiers preparing for a mission. My husband drafted a formal letter to the loan company, withdrawing our names from Emma's car payments. I wrote an email to her landlord explaining I would no longer be covering the monthly supplement. His reply came within minutes. Understood. I'll inform her of the updated balance today. At 6 o'clock, we printed everything. Texts, receipts, screenshots, even the old voice memo from Christmas 2 years ago, when my mother, not realizing the phone was recording, leaned toward Emma and said, "Don't bother getting her anything nice. She never appreciates it anyway." By 7, the folder was bound with a crimson ribbon I'd found in the junk drawer, ironic a leftover from one of Emma's elaborate birthday parties for her kids. We placed it on the doormat of her perfect Pinterest house, rang the bell, and walked away. We were halfway down the street when the scream tore through the morning. Raw guttural so sharp it made a neighbor rush out in his robe. Emma's voice carried like a siren, shrill enough to rattle windows. My husband gripped the wheel tighter as we drove, a small smile ghosting across his face. We didn't look back. Later, we heard the rest. The neighbor called the police, convinced someone had been injured. Officers arrived to find Emma clutching the folder, red-faced and frantic, trying to insist it was harassment. They flipped through the pages, scanning screenshots and receipts, and finally told her it was a civil matter. Nothing illegal. Nothing they could escalate. In other words, truth. By noon, my phone was a storm. 38 messages from my sister in less than an hour. The first one screamed in all caps, "What is wrong with you? How could you?" Then came guilt. "We are family. You can't do this to us." Then bargaining. "Please, you can't just stop paying because of a joke." And finally threats. "If you don't take this back, you'll regret it." I didn't reply. Instead, I forwarded the digital folder to our extended family, our aunts, uncles, cousins, with a single subject line, in case you ever wondered why we stopped showing up. No commentary. No explanations. Just the truth. The replies trickled in all afternoon. Some were shocked I had no idea. Others were simple, "Good for you." A few stayed silent, but silence itself was an answer. 2 weeks later, the consequences began to unfold. Emma's landlord issued a formal notice 30 days to cover the full rent or face eviction. The loan company flagged the car for default. My parents called my husband, bypassing me entirely. My mother's voice cracked on the line, insisting he talk sense into me. "She won't listen to us," she said. "Maybe she'll listen to you. Tell her we're sorry. Tell her she doesn't have to do this." My husband's reply was quiet, steady. "She's not doing this to you. You did this to yourselves." The next morning, my parents appeared at our door. Through the window, my daughter spotted them and froze her face pale. I stepped outside, closing the door behind me. My father's jaw was tight, his hands shoved in his pockets. "We just want to talk," he said. "This is getting out of hand." "No," I answered. "This is called consequences." My mother's eyes glistened. She tried to cry, but her tears refused to fall. "You've gone too far," she whispered. I shook my head. "You went too far the moment you let her hand my child that bag." They left a card in the mailbox. A sympathy card, the kind you buy for funerals. Inside, in my mother's looping handwriting, it read, "We miss our family." I sent it back with a sticky note of my own. So did I. That evening, my husband took us for ice cream. We didn't celebrate. We didn't laugh. We just breathed. And in that breathing, there was something new. Peace. But peace I knew was never permanent with them. They didn't know how to let go. For a few days, the house felt lighter, as if air had finally started flowing through windows that had long been shut. My daughter smiled more easily, leaning into her galaxy headband again, drawing pictures of stars that didn't feel like armor anymore, but like joy. I wanted to believe the worst was behind us. But history had taught me better. With my family, silence was never peace. It was only preparation. 10 days after we left the folder, my daughter came home from school with something tucked into her backpack. She pulled it out hesitantly, a pastel note with hearts lining the border, written in handwriting I knew as well as my own. "If you ever feel sad or confused, remember Auntie Emma loves you. You can call me anytime, even if your mom says no." My daughter's brow furrowed. "Did I do something wrong?" she asked. My chest burned with a fury so hot it startled me. This wasn't just cruelty anymore. It was manipulation, targeted and deliberate. I called the school immediately. They told me Emma had used a friend's name to drop something off no ID check, no oversight. I filed a no-contact order with the district that very afternoon. Then I called my lawyer, who drafted a cease and desist that went out to both my sister and my parents within 24 hours. 2 days later, an anonymous account appeared online tagging me in blurry childhood photos with captions like, "Some people forget who raised them." Another message warned kids grow up. "One day she'll know what you did." I sent everything straight to my lawyer, who forwarded it to law enforcement. The paper trail grew thicker, and with it, so did my resolve. Meanwhile, Emma posted a crying selfie captioned, "When your family turns on you." Her followers rushed to console her, sending prayers and heart emojis. But truth has a way of leaking quiet at first, then louder. A cousin shared screenshots of Emma's messages mocking me. Another replayed an old voicemail where my mother dismissed my concerns. One by one, the cracks widened. At a hastily arranged family Zoom call, questions surfaced. Why wasn't I invited to Grandpa's birthday? Why had Emma used money from the emergency family fund when she was the one with the steadiest job? My mother froze, fumbling for words. By the end of the call, several cousins had quietly exited the meeting, leaving my parents' faces frozen on a screen with fewer and fewer witnesses. Soon after, my sister deactivated her account. Then came the letter. Blue ink on cream stationery, my mother's signature flourish curling at the bottom. "Family is complicated. We've made mistakes, but we are all we have. Don't punish everyone forever for one misunderstanding. Your daughter will regret the distance, and so will you." I read it once. Then I framed it. I hung it on the wall beside the sticky note that had started it all. "Try harder next year." The two artifacts sat side by side, a shrine to what I had endured and to the choice I had finally made. Meanwhile, my daughter began to change in ways that mattered most. She started sleeping through the night. She laughed without glancing around to see if anyone was mocking her. She made 2 friends in art class, girls who didn't laugh when she needed earplugs during assemblies, who thought her galaxy drawings were magical. One evening, she curled up beside me and whispered, "My heart doesn't feel like it's buzzing anymore." I hugged her so tight, she squeaked. At the end of the school year, her class hosted a family day. Each child could invite one adult. She chose me, of course. I walked into the classroom to find her painting pinned proudly to the wall, an explosion of colors, swirls of galaxies, and pink comets. In the corner, in careful black letters, she had written, "Safe is better than big." I blinked hard, swallowing the lump in my throat. On the way home, I asked if she wanted ice cream. She nodded, then paused. "Mom," she said, voice steady, "you did the right thing, even if they say you're mean. Even if they never talk to us again. You did the right thing." I smiled through tears. "Thank you, sweetheart. That means everything." She leaned back in her seat, content, her galaxy headband catching the sunlight like a crown. Later that night, I checked my email. A new message blinked at the top of the inbox. No subject line, no greeting, just 6 words. "Are you happy now? You won." I didn't write back. I didn't need to. Because Emma was wrong. This wasn't about winning. It was about walking away. And for the first time, I realized I hadn't just saved myself. I'd stopped the cycle before it could shape my daughter the way it had shaped me. Time moved differently after that email. The absence of constant buzzing on my phone felt almost foreign, like I had stepped out of a crowded train station into an empty field. My daughter's laughter became the background music of our days. Yet even in this piece, I knew better than to believe it was finished. With my family, silence was not surrender. It was reloading. A week later, an invitation slipped into our mailbox from a cousin's wedding. My name was printed neatly on a place card at a table full of relatives I hadn't spoken to in months. It wasn't really an invitation, it was bait. I declined politely. The next day, my mother left a voicemail dripping with brittle sweetness. "It's not healthy to isolate yourself, darling. Family is family. Don't let Emma's mistakes keep you away." I deleted it without a second thought. Isolation was not what I felt. For the first time, I felt free. But my parents weren't done. They sent a second letter, this one less polished, almost frantic. My father's handwriting was scrawled in the margins. "We're getting older. Don't make us beg. We need you." I stared at the words, the same man who had watched me leave that party with my daughter's hand in mine and hadn't lifted a finger. Now suddenly, he needed me. I slipped the letter into the folder. Truth deserved to stay in one place. Meanwhile, my daughter thrived. She painted more galaxies this time, filling them with bold streaks of color. She started humming while she worked, unafraid of taking up space. One evening, she asked me, "Do you think Auntie Emma will ever be nice to me?" The question lodged in my throat. I answered carefully, "Maybe. But you don't have to wait for her to be kind in order to be okay." She thought about it, then nodded. "Safe is better than big," she said, repeating her own wisdom back to me. I kissed the top of her head. Children shouldn't have to carry such lessons, but she wore it like armor anyway. Emma, however, didn't disappear. A fake account popped up on social media, leaving barbed comments under posts about parenting, accusing me of being bitter, ungrateful, even dangerous. At first, I blocked them. Then I collected screenshots and forwarded them to my lawyer. "You're building a wall," he said. "One they can't climb." The image gave me comfort. Every paper filed, every screenshot saved, every receipt stacked neatly. It was a brick, mortared with patience, sealing my daughter's world from their reach. The extended family grew quieter too. An aunt I adored reached out privately. "I always knew something was wrong," she admitted. "We just didn't know how to say it." Her voice cracked with guilt, but I didn't need her apology. What mattered was that she saw now. The truth had found its own witnesses. By midsummer, The rhythm of our lives had shifted into something almost normal. We had pizza nights, library trips, afternoons of baking lopsided cookies that tasted better than anything picture-perfect. My daughter learned how to ride her bike squealing with delight as her wheels wobbled down the street. At bedtime, she tucked herself under her blanket and whispered, "You are safe. You are strong. You are loved," before falling asleep. The words weren't just stitched into the fabric anymore, they lived in her. Still, the past tried to claw back. Another letter arrived from my mother, this one carefully worded as if drafted by someone else. "Family isn't perfect," it read, "but forgiveness is the glue. Don't let bitterness harden your heart. One day you'll regret pushing us away." I almost laughed. Bitterness hadn't hardened my heart. Boundaries had softened. It made space for love to actually grow. Forgiveness, they meant, was permission to hurt me again. I placed the letter in the same frame as the others, hung them like relics on the wall, and walked away. One late evening, my husband and I sat on the porch, the air humming with crickets. "Do you ever wonder if we went too far?" I asked. He leaned back, eyes steady. "No. We didn't go far enough for how long they chipped away at you. We just finally stopped the bleeding." His words settled into me like stone, grounding and immovable. He was right. Cutting them off wasn't cruelty. It was first aid. As autumn approached, my daughter's school invited me to speak at Family Day, to share what kindness looks like at home. I hesitated, nervous about being too raw. But when I stood in front of her class, I simply said, "Kindness means showing up without conditions. It means making people feel safe, not small." The teacher smiled. My daughter's eyes shone. That night, she whispered, "I'm glad you're my mom." For the first time, I believed I was enough. The quiet from my parents stretched longer. They had lost their audience. Without an audience, their drama shriveled. And in that quiet, I found myself again. Not the shrinking child, not the scapegoat sister, not even the dutiful daughter. Just me. A mother, a wife, a woman who finally chose peace over performance. Winter crept in gently, the kind of season that made old wounds ache and quiet houses feel like sanctuaries. By then, the storm had mostly burned itself out. Emma no longer sent messages. My parents no longer left voicemails, though I still caught wind of the occasional Facebook post, vague enough to deny, but sharp enough to sting. Prayers for families torn apart, my mother wrote once, accompanied by a stock photo of clasped hands. But there were fewer likes than before. People were tired, and silence, when chosen, is louder than any performance. I noticed something else. My daughter was lighter. She laughed without glancing at me for reassurance. She wore her Galaxy headband to school and announced proudly that she was a whole universe. At bedtime, she no longer asked whether her aunt was mad at her. She asked about constellations, about how stars are born, about whether galaxies could stretch forever. "Safe is better than big," she reminded me once when I worried about the smallness of our circle. She was right. Small and safe held more love than large and conditional ever could. Then one afternoon, another envelope appeared in the mail. The handwriting was shaky, rushed. My father this time. Inside was a short note. "We're not getting any younger. Family is family. Don't let stubbornness ruin what's left." I stared at the page, my throat tight, not with longing, but with recognition. These were the same words I'd heard all my life, recycled and repackaged. They weren't an invitation. They were a demand dressed as nostalgia. I folded the note neatly and placed it in the folder with the others. It belonged to the record, not to me. What struck me most in those months wasn't what I lost, but what I gained. Peace is not glamorous. It doesn't sparkle or shout. It looks like pizza nights, where no one is criticized for how they chew. It sounds like a 7-year-old humming while painting galaxies without fear of laughter. It feels like falling asleep knowing the phone won't buzz with manipulation disguised as love. That's what safety tastes like, ordinary and extraordinary all at once. Still, I sometimes caught myself wondering what people would think. Did they see me as cruel? Did they believe Emma's stories, my parents' carefully crafted narratives? Maybe some did. But then I remembered the neighbor who called the police that morning when Emma screamed, the officers calmly labeling the folder for what it was: truth. I remembered the cousin who replied, "Good for you." The aunt who whispered, "I always suspected." Truth has its own quiet witnesses. It doesn't need me to scream. It only needs me to keep standing. One evening, my husband and I sat with mugs of cocoa, the house wrapped in the glow of our daughter's fairy lights. "Do you regret it?" I asked softly. He shook his head. "No. Because for once, you chose yourself. And you chose her." He nodded toward our daughter's room, where she slept peacefully under her blanket, breathing evenly, untroubled. That, he reminded me, was the only measure that mattered. Peace measured in breaths, not performances. Spring arrived with new colors, fresh starts, and one last attempt from my parents. A card this time with embossed roses. "We miss our granddaughter. Children grow up. One day she'll want answers. Don't poison her against us." I held the card for a long time. Then I wrote a single sticky note and returned it in the same envelope. "You did that yourselves." For the first time, I didn't feel a pang of doubt, only certainty. Months later, at my daughter's school art showcase, she stood beside her newest painting, a swirl of blues and golds comets streaking across the canvas. In the corner, she had written 3 words in bold, deliberate strokes: safe, strong, loved. When I asked her what inspired it, she grinned. "Because that's me." And in that moment, I knew every choice, every sleepless night, every confrontation had been worth it. She wasn't shrinking. She was shining. Looking back now, I realized something profound. The lesson isn't about money or folders or even sticky notes. It's about boundaries. Boundaries are not the opposite of love. They are the framework that allows love to survive without crushing the people inside it. Forgiveness without change is permission. Silence without safety is complicity. Family without respect is performance. And when performance becomes the only language, walking away is the only translation left. So if you're listening to this wondering whether you're cruel for saying enough, hear me: choosing peace for yourself or your child isn't cruelty. It's courage. It's not disloyal to end cycles that harm you. It's loyalty to the life you're building. I didn't win. There was nothing to win. I simply walked away. And for the first time, I didn't look back. If this story touched you, please take a moment to like this video so it can reach others who need it. Share it with someone finding their own voice. Subscribe for more true stories about family resilience and setting boundaries. And tell me in the comments, what would you have done in my place?